Hey everyone, this is Oscar from Underdog, and today I want to teach you how to use a free synthesizer VST if this perhaps is your first synthesizer that you're ever going to use. This is a follow-up video from my previous video on synthesis, in theory, how to do subtractive synthesis. And here I want to show you in practice in the actual interface of a synthesizer. Now, I like to use a music software called Ableton Live. It's a digital audio workstation. That means that it's a very big software package that has a timeline where you can create and compose your own music on it. However, if you're just starting out making music and for some reason you can't use the full trial of Ableton, you might be limited to something like the Ableton Intro version, which has no really good synthesizers included in it. So no matter what software you use, no matter what digital audio workstation you use, I want you to be able to start experimenting and getting your hands dirty with actual synthesis. And today what I recommend that you do is I recommend that you get this free synthesizer called Vital. I have absolutely no affiliation with Vital. This isn't a sponsored video. I just think it's very cool to have a free synthesizer where the interface makes the theory concept very easy to apply. At the end of the day, you can do synthesis with any synthesizer tool that you have, but if you have none, get this one so we can get started together. Go to the Vital website, download the VST, install the VST, and then get yourself any digital audio workstation and find where you can grab the VST and drag it into a track so you can send it notes and start making sound. Let me show you this practically in the DAW. So here we are in our music making software. My music making software is called Ableton Live, but you can follow along in whatever the one is that you have. But within your software, somewhere, you have the ability to go to plugins, which is going to show you your VST plugins. And so I'm going to go in here and go to Vital Audio and drag Vital into one of these vertical strips, which are my audio channels or my MIDI channels. These are the things that represent vertically one instrument per vertical slice, right? And so in here now, there is Vital. If I hit the middle row on my keyboard, I can play notes. There we go. This is the middle row of the notes on my computer keyboard, and I can use this to just keep triggering the sound to shape it as I like. Jamming out super annoyingly. There's one tool from the DAW that I'm going to want to put here to help us understand what we're looking at, and that is called a spectrum analyzer. You might remember that audio has two dimensions. It has volume, and then it has frequencies. I'll go into some more detail on that in a moment. But first, let's bring back our theory. Let's go back to the theory that we were learning in the last video, which was that we have the oscillator, which is a little screaming man, which goes into an amplifier, like a volume control, and that then goes into our ear. We're going to forget about the filter for now, okay? We're just not going to talk about it until the next chapter. So first, let's talk about the oscillator. Let's look at our synthesizer interface and see what we've got here. We've got a lot of words on screen, but somewhere at the top left, you see here, OSC1. My name is Oscar, but doesn't stand for Oscar, it stands for oscillator, okay? Oscillator 1. As you can see, there's actually 3 oscillators, but we're not even going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about one oscillator. And it is constantly making noise right now in the background. It is screaming like its life depends on it, like the little guy in the room that I was talking about earlier. And every time that we hit a note on our keyboard, the volume comes up according to this thing here on the right, the envelope. And so if you look at the envelope, you'll see something like the shape that we were describing. There's an attack, a decay, and then the sustain level, and then the release, right? So if you wanted to act like a binary switch, we can just let the sustain at the maximum and put a really short release and go on, off, whenever I hit a key. However, let's draw the 3 shapes that we talked about in the previous example. So the first shape was the piano style shape. So a really short attack, a sustain that's like about halfway or something, a decay that's not too long, and a release that's not too long. Let's see what that sounds like. So, I feel like the decay is even a bit too long. We can make it even shorter. It gets loud, it comes to its resting position, and then it goes out in its release phase. Let's do a drone instead. Let's set the sustain to the maximum. Let's make it longer, and this longer. I don't know how long this is in actual milliseconds, but we're going to find out with trial and error. Often in synthesis, trial and error is better than trying to calculate something too mathematically and trying to be too exact. So here we go. I'm going to hit the button. I'm holding the button, and when I let go of the button, a long tail. We can make it even more exaggerated. Let's do a crazy long one. Let it go. Super long. It could be even way longer. Look, the attack, look, we could increase it to be 30 seconds long and the release to be 30 seconds long. I don't suggest that we do that right now because it's going to make this video really long. So let's not do that. But you can see that we can make really long, soft, evolving tones like this, right? Cool. And the third envelope that we were talking about was a pluck style envelope. And the pluck style envelope was super short attack, 0 sustain, and a short decay. Not bad. We can lengthen it a bit. It's this decay here that tells us how long the sound is. Tiny little pluck to something that's really long and sustained sounding. Okay. Easy peasy. Those are the 3 envelope styles that we looked at. Now, before we get into the filter, which is where the sound shaping really comes into its own, first I want to look together at the shape of the oscillator, because in my theory in the last chapter and here, I've always talked about a sawtooth wave. This is a sawtooth wave, and it is maybe one of the most recognizable sounds in music production because it's so standard. It's in pretty much every synthesizer. Every synthesizer can do a sawtooth wave. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to flick through a couple of different types of oscillators. Let's see. Oh, let's put the sustain up so we can actually hear what we're doing. This one is a sine wave, just a simple sine wave. This is a square wave. It sounds more hollow and robot-y than a sawtooth wave. But we can get really weird shapes. So there's already some sound design that you can do at the level of the oscillator. But one of the things that almost all oscillators will have in common in this type of synthesis is that they are all a little bit too much, a little bit too bright, a little bit too much information, because they assume that in subtractive synthesis, you're going to cut away some of that information. Let's go back to that sawtooth wave, right? The sawtooth wave, when I play a note, you can see its frequencies right here. A sawtooth wave is made up of a whole bunch of different sine waves at different frequencies, all playing together all the way up to the top of the hearing spectrum, which is about 20,000 hertz. And this is going to be too bright. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in our signal chain, as you remember, oscillator, filter, amplifier, listener. And so we're going to add in the filter, and the filter is down here, just like this. And what it has is a cutoff frequency above which it reduces all the frequencies. So let's put the cutoff frequency at the maximum, and then let's sweep it down so we can hear the sound going darker and darker and darker. So I'm going to hit a note, super bright, and then as I bring this down, we're darkening the sound, and then it almost completely disappears. Now it's almost completely gone. Now, one thing that I can do, if you look on the spectrum analyzer, you'll see that the lowest frequency is here at approximately 270 something hertz. So I can in fact play a few octaves lower on the keyboard to lower that. So in Ableton on my keyboard, it's the bottom left key. For me, that's a W because I'm in Belgium. But wherever you are, it's probably the bottom left key. And that brings your octave, see, down, down. So 2 octaves down. Let's see what happens now. Now my lowest frequency is even lower. And so when I bring down the filter, it gets really warm. We call these frequencies sub-bass frequencies. They can be really nice when they're amplified really loud, like in a nightclub or something. And then we can bring back in the high frequencies really loud. So remember, what we're going to do is we're going to first make it dark, and then we're going to use another envelope to open this up over time with a little plucky shape. So here we go, envelope number 2. You can see we can make an entirely new envelope here compared to envelope number 1. Envelope number 2, we can bring that down into a little plucky shape. And then we just have to make sure that somehow this envelope is now mapped to the filter. That's not hard to do, but you just have to know how. It's when you drag from here underneath the envelope, you'll see that everything lights up green that it can become. And I'm going to drag it here to this slider. And so now when I hit a note, oh, there we go. Look at that. Bam, it opens up super far in a little plucky sound. Maybe I wanted to open up a little bit less far. I can just set that amount by dragging here. Bow, 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 bow. Excellent, cool, I'm shaping my sound now. This already sounds really cool. Remember, I can shape the envelope of this filter separately from my amplifier. So for example, I can make a little bit of attack on it. Wow. 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 Pretty cool, right? Let's try it with a different shape. Ooh, that's with a square wave. Sounds much more digital, doesn't it? Let's try with a triangle wave. Oh, very, very mild. Let's flick through some shapes and just see what happens. Whoa, what a weird sound. Sick. Awesome. Okay, let's say I like this sound. Imagine I like this sound. One cool thing about this type of synthesizer, by the way, is that instead of just oscillators, it has something called wavetables, which means basically an oscillator form that can morph in different ways. So I can just drag this slider up and down and it changes the shape of the oscillator in different ways. Let's come back to that soon. First, let's add some effects. Remember that at the end of the signal chain, often synthesizers will add some effects to make things sound big and lush and interesting. So we just go here to the effects tab. And on the effects tab, we've got all these special effects. And I mentioned 2 specifically that were really good. One was delay and one was reverb. Let's just start with delay. I just activated it here. And then when I hit the button, it goes like this. Wow. Interesting. There's all these fun parameters to play with. Let's turn up the feedback. Let's go to ping pong so it goes from left to right. Oh, psychedelic. Love it. Cutoff. Oh, look, there's a little filter built into it if you want it to be. Nice. Then let's go to the reverb. Add in some reverb. It sounds like it's more in a hall. Let's exaggerate that. Ooh, imagine we're in a big church or something. Cool, very fun. More plucky. Not bad. But now there's so much going on, maybe we want the time of the reverb to be shorter. That's a cool sound. By the way, here on the bottom you can see which notes I'm playing. Huh? Dope. Maybe it's a little bit much. Just a little bit of this. Often a little bit of effects just make things sound better without necessarily cluttering up everything. Awesome, so now we've got some effects. And now to make things complete, let's go back to the voice and let's introduce ourselves to the LFOs. The LFOs, as you might remember, are called the low frequency oscillators. And the low frequency oscillators, all they do is they change a sound over time gradually. So for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to map this LFO to the filter cutoff as well. So here we go, LFO to the filter cutoff. You'll see here that there's now 2 little circles, which means that there's 2 parameters which are influencing this filter cutoff. You might have guessed it that this filter cutoff is actually one of the most important parameters in all of synthesis, right? So get really comfortable with that. And so this LFO, when I hit a button, I'm holding down the key. See how this goes up and down and up and down? Pretty cool. Now, obviously it's too much. I mean, for me, it's too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the amount. That's all I wanted. Very cool. And I want it to go a little bit slower. So I'm going to set it to instead of half a beat, I'm going to set it to seconds. And let's say once every 2 seconds or so. And instead of triggering every time that I hit the keyboard, I want it to just go forever. I don't want it to restart every time. So now it's just slowly changing each hit so that not every hit is identical over time. You can see it's just moving. And sometimes it gets brighter and sometimes it gets darker. It's exaggerated. See? Nice, huh? Let me make it that warbly envelope again. Fun. And so as you can see, envelopes and LFOs, they can interact with each other and they can make things quite chaotic. And so let's use another LFO to modulate the shape of this oscillator, because that's one of the most fun things in a synthesizer like this. The oscillators can change the sound so drastically. So let me map that and let's see what happens when I just hit go. Oh, weird. Okay, we're gonna have to change some parameters. First of all, let's change the direction. Oh yeah, look at that pulsating. That's satisfying. We're making such a weird alien sound right now. This is sound design. If you're following along, you're being a sound designer. Notice how every time that I re-trigger the note, the LFO restarts. I don't like that behavior. I prefer sync, which just means that it never restarts when I hit the note. I just want it to evolve over time. Super cool, very fun. And so from here you can sound design everything. You now understand how this synth works. The oscillator goes into the filter, goes into the amplifier. The amplifier is kind of invisible behind here, but envelope 1 is basically where the amplifier is at, right? And then it goes into effects where you can make the sound more lush or more weird and interesting if you mess around with all these effects. But if you have followed along, you are now officially a synthesizer. You are synthesizing with synthesizers. It becomes a bit of a weird word to say after a while. And so now it's up to you to figure out in your DAW how to go in and program some notes so that you can create a little riff for yourself. So for example, you just play some notes. Let me select them all and play them an octave down. And now without hitting any keys, I can just shape the sound in the synth. Like for example, I don't want it to go so bright every time. So let's go here. This is quite beautiful. And I'm just tweaking by ear to find sweet spots. And there we go, that's our free synthesizer tutorial. If you are new to making electronic music and you'd like to learn in a very structured way, follow my Foundations of Electronic Music course. It assumes no prior knowledge, and in a very systematic and thorough and calm way, it walks you through all the steps that you need to start producing your first music. If you don't want to dive in on the deep end just yet, feel free to just check out my channel. I publish free content every single week, but sometimes those tutorials can be a little bit haphazard, a little bit left, a little bit right, sometimes an intermediate level concept or even an advanced level concept. So as a beginner, it can all be a bit overwhelming and a bit much. So if you think you have some holes in your basic knowledge, go follow my Foundations of Electronic Music course. And until next time, stay producing, be good to each other, and take care. Bye-bye.